to me.
Hey, this is Nomad, host and creator of the Career Musician Podcast. Why do they call me Nomad? Well, I traveled the globe, spreading the joy of music one song at a time. And now I bring you wisdom, tried and true knowledge, and life experiences of my colleagues and peers in this crazy business we call music. In today's episode, we have Dave Hooper, Los Angeles-based session and touring drummer extraordinaire.
This is the Career Musician Podcast with your host, Nomad.
Larry Graham from Graham Central Station, Lee Ritenour, the Rippingtons, Shaka Khan, Tony Braxton, Sheryl Crow, and the list goes on and on. Actually, Dave and I worked together with Donny Osmond. That's right, puppy love, baby. Anyway, Hoop, as I refer to him so dearly, is the man. I love his style of drumming. He's efficient, he's tasteful, he's soulful, he's spot on. And you know what? As a musician, as a sideman, quote unquote, a career musician, he is always prepared. And that is the key to the gig, ladies and gentlemen. But we also discuss his brand new website called possiblechops.com. He is burning it up. And remember, it's vital to always be prepared for the unexpected. Dave Hooper, drummer to the stars and beyond.
Well, thank you for having me.
Creator of possiblechops.com. Mm-hmm. Father and husband, and, all these great things. So, yes, welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here. We're old friends, and I love your podcast, so I'm excited to be on it.
Thank you, man. Yeah. Thank you. So Dave and I were just sitting here talking about Possible Chops, right? And the website build and how it's almost like an arduous task to take these things on. And as musicians, we're always looking for other sources of income, right? And you said, hey, you know what? I believe, and I'll let you take the ball. We were talking about the niche, and you were saying it is a niche market again. Mm-hmm. Because it's almost like there's the market saturation with everything else. So talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to go back and talk about your history and stuff.
Yeah, well, I've noticed that the internet being what it is, and it just gets bigger and bigger every year, and there's more and more musicians offering music lessons online on every instrument, and primarily the long-form lessons, where you see the guy on camera, talking into the camera, right. Uncomfortably so, much of the time, trying to explain what they're doing. And I had this idea with my childhood friend, Gary Novak, and we were talking about how you add new ideas to your playing. And most of the time, and I'm sure it's true on all instruments, so you can speak to guitar, it's easy to get new ideas from other players. If you're in the same room with them and they play something cool, you have an opportunity to say, okay, stop.
That was neat.
Show me that.
Right.
I want to learn that. I want to absorb that into my playing. And so Possible Chops was born from that idea because drummers absolutely get together and jam, and it's loud and kind of obnoxious with having two drummers, in the same room. But have them play, it's even more so. But so that's where it came from. And I know you're doing lessons as well, and it's interesting to study the internet and people's attention span. And I'm not the young guy anymore, but I do see attention spans get shorter and shorter.
Yes. And
this idea of getting somebody to sit with you for 30 minutes and actually pay attention for 30 minutes seems
it's
tough
almost
now.
Archaic. It's almost an archaic business model, wouldn't you think?
I do.
Agree?
I think so many kids are learning to do everything on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, I'm guilty of it too. Even with everyday things. I got to fix something in my house. I'm like, well, let me just get on YouTube.
Right.
But
I'm at the point when I watch YouTube tutorials, I get so impatient with the person teaching. I'm like, Don't say hello. Just get to the point.
Well, I would say that's the point of Possible Chops is all we're doing is hammering nails. There's no, hi, welcome, and blah, blah, blah. You know, that's...
My name is Dave. Okay, well, that is our intro. PossibleChops.com.
Yeah.
We're going to close with that, and we're going to talk about the particulars and the logistics and details and whatnot. But, growing up, you have a good story that you've told.
I do,
around many around tables with libations in hand. We're starting with your history. So your history.
All right. Here we go. I'll try to sound embarrassed by this, but I'm sort of proud of it. So my father, when we lived in Chicago, he wrote jingles, and he wrote pretty much every jingle. He was a pretty prolific guy.
Wow.
And when I was a kid, he was doing all the Jolly Green Giant commercials, and they needed a kid to voice the little green sprout. And so, being the composer's son, I was sort of the first call. So I started my music career as the voice of the animated character, the Little Green Sprout.
All right, if I do the Jolly Green Giant voice, will you do the Little Green Sprout?
I'll get you the jingle, and you can intercut it into the podcast.
If you can send me that.
So it sounds like this.
In the valley of the Jolly Green Giant.
Yeah. I don't think that I got the gig because I was great at voiceovers or even as a singer. It was, it was who you know, which is a topic that really comes up, I think, in your podcast and many others. To be a career musician, who you know is important. So
that's right.
That my dad was a composer, that was easy and some lovely nepotism for me. But but then through that, I sang on jingles as a kid, and you
turned it into a little bit of a career then.
Yeah, so my parents put all the money away, and it did pay my way through college. So
it went into a Coogan account?
Yeah.
Wow, I was just going to ask you that.
Yeah.
Okay,
but
then
my voice changed, and singing was not what I was going to do. And my dad was a pianist, and somebody from the high school came with drums, and that was it. I was like, I think that's what I want to do. And so my dad got me a drum set, and we started jamming. So that was the beginning of my drumming, just jamming with my dad on piano, and he was good. He would play in phrases, and he would repeat things along the way, and you would develop your ear, which I think is hugely important, especially for drummers, to listen to what's going on and try to remember patterns when they come back around. And drumming is a lot of patterns, a lot of math, a lot of things like that. And I do owe so much of the beginnings to my dad with that. And then that progressed into high school, and then he started using me on jingles, and I started just playing. Wow. It was everything from Coca-Cola to Carl's Jr. to Budweiser to Honda. He did everything. It was pretty incredible.
So while you're in high school, and then I guess even some of your college years, you're earning money as a session player.
Yeah.
For big national jingles.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
So literally, because the average teenager, who's an aspiring professional musician, that's like the dream. If you could get those gigs, that was handed. I mean, I'm not trying to belittle it, but it was handed to you on your lap. In your lap. It was because of who your father was. So, just talk about that. Was that surreal? Did you have other peers and musician friends who were jealous of that? Or how did that?
I will say it's a bit of a double-edged sword. So there's a lot good for me in all of that, obviously, because that sort of nepotism of your father hiring you, being in a position to hire you. Maybe the equivalent in the movie industry is if your dad's a big-time celebrity, he can throw you in his film. So, that happens, and you'll see a lot of kids of celebrities get a head start with career. So I'm grateful for that, absolutely. And when I went to college, most of my friends there were like, what are you doing here? I went to North Texas State, and they were like, when we're done here, we're going to L.A. What are you doing here?
You already have a career.
Yeah. But I wanted to go to school and learn more. Just, there's a lot to know.
And you did graduate.
To be a musician. So I went for 2 years. Okay. I did not graduate, but it's funny. I tell my wife, who has an MD, it took a while to kind of explain in the music industry, having a degree in music doesn't guarantee you performance gigs in any way,
shape, or form.
And in fact, I would almost go so far as to say it would be a hindrance, because college players have a stigma to them that people think, oh, he's a college player, he's got his bow tie on, and he's kind of nerdy and stiff.
By the book.
What they want is someone who kind of came up and had a struggle and, really learned in a more organic way, and they've got a soul to them, and they're not so cerebral in their playing. And I understand that, but, whatever draws you to music, I think... initially has to be a very visceral, heartfelt thing. I think you and I tend to spend a lot of time in the cerebral areas of the industry, playing, prepping, dealing with gigs and all that stuff, which we'll get into. But sorry, I'm getting a little off track. It was the path, and then after 2 years of college, I came back to LA and I got busy. Thankfully,
I was going to say, I know you. Yeah. So did your dad as they say, put you on some dates or what? How did that happen?
Yeah. So my dad. So he was writing for these TV shows like Charlie's Angels and Rhoda and Lou Grant, some of these things, and then he would get commissioned to do orchestral arrangements for the LA Phil. He was doing some big orchestra dates, big high production jingles when that was a thing. Now it's much more the home studio thing. That's what the jingle industry is. I was getting all sorts of opportunities to do things like that, and then I would say that my process was sort of putting myself out there, and I was befriending other drummers and other players. People that I'd met through my dad, of course, but, and then I would get opportunities to play. And my goal was always to try to do the gig better, if I could, than the regular guy. My thinking was that's what's going to get, they're like, wow, well.
But that's a logical train of thought, right?
Yeah. If you can succeed at that, there's logic. It should work.
But all of this explains why... seriously, why you do epitomize what the career musician is. So you're a ridiculous reader. So you could read fly shit, literally. Like, I've seen you do it. So I think, like, these formative years with your dad while you're in high school doing these sessions, and then being in North Texas State is known for being one of the best schools in the country, and then also being an LA session cat. Those three things, like, again, you already lived the lives of 3 successful musicians by the time you graduated college. I mean, in a sense, you know what I mean? Or you at least had 3 lanes of solid experience that most cats don't get, right?
Yeah, that's really hard to shortcut experience.
I say that all the time. People ask, well, how do I get good? Put in the time.
You got to do it a lot.
The Outliers, the book is talking about 10,000 hours. It's 30,000. It's 20,000, 30,000, 40,000.
Yeah.
It's right? There's no other...
So much of the wisdom of the older players, and that's true from everyone's perspective. To us, there's a lot of older players that have wisdom we have yet to gain.
Yes.
Going through all this stuff and the struggles and the challenges, you get better at it. The idea is you get a better handle on it. You can deal with it. There will always be hurdles. We all still deal with hurdles now with our careers. But, the experience means a lot. And I would say that from the band leader's perspective, he'll get a sense that this guy's got the experience and they relax. That's the... That's you've led bands.
Oh, talk about that, man.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
All right, so...
I'm leading a band right now.
I would say from a sideman's perspective... one of the biggest things the biggest favor you can do yourself is to put yourself in the band leader's shoes as best you can. It's not easy. I mean, it's an old adage. It's an old phrase.
Put the shoe in the other foot.
Like try to imagine what the band leader's going through. It's his name on the marquee. It's his responsibility to bring a band to the venue, to put on a good show, to say something not embarrassing on the mic, if not intuitive and wonderful. And if the guys in the band are late or they didn't bother listening to the stuff or they don't seem into it or they can't fake it or all the things that would lead the band leader to be uncomfortable up there. If you just imagine what that experience is like, and then when the next gig comes along, when he's looking at who should I call to play, are they going to think of you if you didn't deliver? It's like the guys it's not enough just to play great.
No.
There's a lot of great players, especially in Los Angeles, but you got to be a good hang. You got to be prepared. You got to have the right attitude. All those things are what. The other things are things that maybe aren't taught in music school or in private lessons. You know, there are life lessons, or your parents should have taught you these things, or good teachers, or something. You know,
literally leave your ego at the door. And I think after you go through enough doors, you shouldn't have an ego anymore. Oh, how about that?
Yeah. The musicians
stop
who are
having an ego, dumbass,
so comfortable with their own playing, they don't have to prove themselves every time they sit down and play. There's something awesome about that, and I use awesome in the true sense of that word. Like, you know, when you see a legend, it's like, check that guy out. There's no wonder he is who he is, because he's owning it. He's just. He's delivering on all fronts.
He, she, they, yeah. Okay, all right. So that's a great segue into resume and credits. So you've played with the greats, I know, but tell the listeners who aren't.
Well, so it's interesting, the career kind of sends you through different avenues. I can remember playing with so many people early on, and I would sort of get identified as my father's son in a lot of ways. That was maybe the downside of having the advantage I had with my dad.
Especially early on in your 20s, I'm assuming.
So, but what I wanted was an accomplishment of my own.
Your own.
You know what I mean? So through my dad, he was one of the first to hire Sheryl Crow. So early in my career, I got to work with Sheryl. I would get these odd opportunities just to do things with Shaka Khan and then James Ingram. And then I remember getting to play with Lee Ritenour, who happened to have never heard of my dad. But I didn't know this, and then we were playing a big show, and I invited my dad. Yeah. And after years of being introduced as Les Hooper's son, I introduced my dad to Lee Ritenour, who said, "Oh, you're Dave Hooper's dad."
That's perfect.
It was a moment.
Flipped it up for you.
It really was like the pivot, or the where it turned. It's like, okay, finally... it wasn't just because of who I was that I was playing and getting opportunities and doing my thing. It was my playing, and that was it. I knew Lee was hiring me for me, not for any other reason. So that was a milestone in my career for sure. And then, I have lately been doing tons of smooth jazz, which is an interesting format. And what I do like about it is the musicians are featured. You can love or hate smooth jazz, the format. The live show is a live show. I would equate it more to instrumental pop music or instrumental R&B.
I agree.
Through all that, working with Dave Koz a lot, I've gotten a chance to work with Sheila E. and Larry Graham. I did a whole tour with Larry, which was just,
I remember you called me about that. You telling me about that.
That was one of those surreal moments where I can remember as a kid practicing with headphones on. And of course, that's maybe a common thing, and you're playing along, and you're trying to imitate the drummer on the recording or whatever. And I found myself on stage playing with Larry, and I was the only drummer. It was like, it's just me. There's no, that was a moment. I don't know if I'm
no longer playing along with the track.
Yeah,
because you were rehearsing with the track with the original drummer from the 70s.
Well, or just practicing in high school, like playing the Sly and the Family Stone. I'm just playing songs, learning grooves, and now there's Larry, the legend, playing. Yeah. It was really great.
It's incredible.
Those legends, playing with Marcus Miller was incredible. All the records I used to play along with, and then getting a chance to play with him was really some great stuff. So those are some of them. That's
awesome.
My laundry list.
Good.
So I had been playing around town doing some sessions, and I remember Tim Landers, the bass player. He called me up and he said, "So Chad Wackerman is leaving the John Tesh gig. Would you like to do it?" So I think I was a little more stuck on I get to follow Chad Wackerman on a gig.
He's a drumming legend, right?
Yeah, and at the time I didn't really even know John's story. I knew he played piano, and wonderful band. I mean, it was really, really incredible. And at the time, John was hosting Entertainment Tonight,
right?
And he was trying to launch his music career, and then it got big enough for him to break his contract with E.T. Wow. And I think at the time, like, Paramount was pursuing him, like there were some legal battles. And I learned so much from John, because he would say, "This is awesome." Like, I'm like, "Wait, you're getting sued." He's like, no, this is great. I'm the little guy, and the big movie studio's coming after me. And he's like, no, he was one of those, all publicity is good publicity, good or bad or whatever. Which, and I don't even remember the details of any of it, but it was... it was really illuminating. I thought, wow, check out this guy. Like, he's a businessman. He's won Emmy Awards as a broadcaster.
That's what I'm saying.
He's pursuing his dream to play piano. He's surrounding himself with great players. I had nothing but admiration for this guy.
Is what I'm saying. That is the ultimate career musician right there. I mean, that's baller status for CMs, you know? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
All right, so that's why I wanted you to tell that, you know. And but you had some really nice experiences working with him. You told me about the story.
Yeah, I mean, he did these big PBS specials. He did this Live at Red Rocks thing, which was, at the time, the biggest concert ever done for PBS. And he mortgaged his house, or he put his house up against it. And we hired the Colorado Symphony, and we were there for a week rehearsing. And then we got, I don't know if you know Red Rocks, it's an open air thing. It was raining while we were going to film, and these orchestra players have these $100,000 plus violins. They're like, no, we're not playing in the rain, and they just left. Like, it was a crazy, awesome experience, and talk about just being able to roll with the punches and deal with crazy that happens, you know. So John just said, all right, well, we're going to do some tunes that we can do without the orchestra, and we did, and then the skies cleared, and they came back, and the helicopters came in for all the aerial shots, and we ran this thing, and it was the biggest success at the time, this Live at Red Rocks thing with John. And, I mean, it really was... Gosh, I gotta look up when this was. This was a good long while ago. Okay. So it might have been in the early 2000s, maybe. Yeah. I mean, it was pretty early on, and then, you know, John, just being who he is, being a celebrity. I know we spent one summer on tour, and Jay Leno at the time had sent a camera crew out to interrupt his show every night, and like he would break away to John's concert, and they had like this feud going on. I'm not sure that was a real feud, but it was very
awesome is that?
entertaining. So I was on the Tonight Show every night. It was just crazy stuff, and really interesting to see, because I'm a drummer. I'm just, you know, I'm a side guy. Yeah. I'm just watching, like, okay, where do you need me to play? What do you want me to play? And I was doing my part, but just watching the machinery move, it was really, really cool to see.
It's one of the perks of the job.
Yeah, and that guy, I can remember, because I got into computer stuff, we can get into that a little bit, but I remember showing John computer stuff, and I never had to show him anything twice. I mean, talk about a brain that's very high functioning, and his retention was really awesome. I mean... You know, it's like he's a really interesting guy. I mean, I really owe a lot to him. It really sort of changed my life, because it was the gig that was a ton of work, and I bought a house, and it was life-changing gig.
Well, check it out. My buddy Hoop is a real tried and true career musician. I've worked with him alongside on countless gigs, and I've seen him in action. So everything he's saying here is really true. He lives it. Let's try to keep in mind the things he mentioned about resume building, about making things easier for the band leader or the MD, the music director. So whoever's in charge at that time, we want to make sure that we did our job to make it easier for them. This way, it's less stress for everybody. And although Hoop had a great upbringing with his dad and he had an advantage in the studio, he still understands the concept of hard work and always being prepared. And you've probably heard me say it before, but I'm going to say it again. The definition of luck is when preparedness meets opportunity.
Add the career musician to your playlist.
Awesome part of like the Tesh gig was that, because
I remember that.
I mean, he had the dough. I mean, he didn't even know what to pay everybody. I mean, he was such a lover of music, but what he knew was broadcasting. He didn't know the music industry, which, you know, I mean, I think there's a lot of stories of celebrities overpaying everybody. If you're lucky enough to be the drummer for Russell Crowe or somebody, you know, like they don't know, or they don't care.
No, I think paying well. I don't like the term overpaying. I think paying well. You know, because I mean, think about it. You know, Think about it. If you're Steve Ferroni and you've been playing with Tom Petty for 35 years, whatever you're making is well deserved.
I feel like that's a really potentially a very long conversation.
Yeah,
like what is good pay? You know, considering the time you spend continuing to improve on your craft. Unlike, there's a lot of people who go to school and they learn their skill and then they just spend the rest of their life doing what they learned in school. Maybe we went to school, maybe we didn't. Everybody has a different path. But you're still learning on guitar. I'm still learning on drums.
On guitar,
we're not in our 20s anymore.
We're still learning in music in general, right? The overall and the niche, right?
Yeah.
So, and you're the person to have this conversation with, because you and I would sit here and have these philosophical debates for hours.
Yeah.
Although we both usually were on the same side of the debate.
Well, yeah.
So a physician, a surgeon, or any kind of a doctor is hailed in the community.
Yeah.
Quite, in high regard, right?
Yeah. And I would say, because I kind of know a little bit about this, there is sort of a reward for continued medical education.
Yes.
Like that is encouraged, and there's actually a financial thing about that. I would say continued musical education in our regard is all up to us.
It's the opposite. The more you study, the better you get in your musical craft.
Yeah.
The less popular you become.
Yeah.
And the less people want to listen to your music.
Yeah.
Look at John Coltrane. Look at Miles Davis. Look at these greats. So.
Yeah. I don't think it's for for instance, for jazz being the one true American art form. It's not really highly regarded. It's no longer part of the Grammy Awards. It's not if you look at the music industry from a financial standpoint, I'm not even sure it represents 1% of the music industry anymore. And yet, arguably, those are some of the best players. You have to be in the top 1% to do it at the level that is considered to be great jazz. And you can look at other formats, pop music, country music, and stuff. That doesn't require the same thing. I would say that. You might put down all the elements that go into the qualifications for doing a gig, that really elite level, crazy technique and chops and ideas and creativity are not required for anything maybe but jazz, because it's. And it's you're lucky to go see it in a smoky dive bar somewhere, and those guys are making what's considered the door, which is I went to go see my buddy Gary Novak at the Big Potato, and they made the door. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I saw like a small pile of 20s, like it was
Let's think about this. How long has the standard in town fee for a gig been? On the low 50, on the high $150, meaning 150.
Yeah. Club gigs.
So we're in let's say we're 2020 soon, right? Okay. Yeah. How long has that actually been the standard pay? Since the 80s. Yeah.
You're touching on something that I've been recently sort of frustrated by. So I did a gig at the Hyatt Newport. It was this jazz gig that has been around a long time.
I played there
and I can remember playing. Yeah, we did it not that long ago, but I did it with the Rippingtons back in the day, like around the time when we met, right?
Yeah.
And I remember what I got paid then, and I remember the promoter at the time is still the guy promoting there, and he happened to be at the gig when I was there, and this might have been a couple months ago. And I pulled him aside, and I said, "Hey, man, I'm just curious, am I making the same money tonight that I made 20 years ago here?" And he just looked at me, and he said, "Yes, you are." Which, I want to say, like, at the risk of sounding very discouraging to young players who want to break in, if you at all can kind of play it forward or do the math, the cost of living has gone way up. The pay on gigs has not. If anything, it's gone down. And the talent pool has just gotten bigger. So that's a discouraging fact.
Ooh, that's a mouthful. Yeah. Those three facts right there. Those three facts. No, let's recap that.
Yes.
So, wow. The cost of living has gone up.
Absolutely.
The pay for gigs has either stayed the same or gone down.
Yeah, it has not gone up.
The talent pool has increased exponentially.
Yeah.
Those are three giant strikes against you.
Yeah. But I would say, so let's try to
what is your psychological twist on this? Because I need to hear it.
Yeah.
All right.
Knowledge, so you go into that this idea that knowledge is power. If you do know this about the industry, there's a couple of factors I think that you have to embody. And I think the primary is the absolute love and joy of playing music.
The passion.
All my friends like you and the guys in my peers, the guys in my age group, it's easy to lose sight of the beginnings and like why you even wanted to take up guitar. Who was it, that gave it to you in the beginning? This is a labor of love. It is a passion. It is something you didn't start out to do for the money.
No.
Well, or at least I didn't.
Well, yeah. I know what you mean.
Okay, as a side man.
Who was your first hero? Your first
probably Steve Gadd.
Steve Gadd. My first hero was Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah.
When I saw Eddie and you saw Steve, we didn't think to ourselves, oh, we're going to be like them so we can make lots of money. That's not the first thought we had.
I had no idea what they made.
Exactly. So
I was too young.
It wasn't even on the radar. We fell in love with what they were doing.
The
music. Passion of it.
The music.
Yes.
So you got to have that. And if you have that, none of those other facts, they're not as depressing. They won't bring you down as much.
All right, so that's good.
And then the other thing I would throw in there is, if you know that, consider how truly great you need to be in all aspects, and all bullet points of the things that you want to endeavor to do. You're very organized with this podcast, and you have questions you want to ask, and it's like, these are the things. So figure out what those things are and excel at every one of them, because just being a great player isn't going to do it. It's everything else. And then, gosh, I don't know what to say about your expectations. I think that managing expectations has been the struggle, I think, of musicians from the beginning. Because if you feel like you deserve 10 times the money and 10 times the fame, you're just destined to jump off a bridge.
To fail.
Drummers! So you're watching an amazing drummer on YouTube, and they're playing something so crazy you just can't figure it out. If only you can tap this drummer on the shoulder and say, hey, can you slow it down and break it down for me, man? PossibleChops.com does exactly that. They've asked some of the top-of-the-line drummers to play in short, digestible phrases some of their craziest chops. Then they slow it down and transcribe it so you can actually learn what the heck they're doing. They're making chops possible. Now, PossibleChops.com is an online drum lesson website that makes it easy to add to your drumming vocabulary from some of the baddest professional drummers. And when I say baddest, I mean the dopest, illest, most ridiculousest drummers you ever heard. Imagine getting a breakdown from drummers who played with the likes of Usher, Earth, Wind & Fire, Chick Corea, Babyface, Sheryl Crow, Tony Braxton, and the list goes on. The PossibleChops.com community is designed to allow drummers to share ideas and help you on your path to becoming a pro and getting gigs. That's right, folks, actually getting real gigs. If you're serious about drumming, do yourself a favor and visit PossibleChops.com. Join today, and basic membership is free. However, if you decide to upgrade to a pro membership, use the promo code NOMAD to get your first free month. That's right, folks. Use coupon code NOMAD and you get the whole first month absolutely free. Adding new chops are now made possible for drummers on PossibleChops.com.
Yeah. And you have to find a way to be happy with where you're at the moment.
And live in that moment.
Yeah, it's a very in the moment experience, I think. Music in so many ways. I mean, you can apply that to... I was thinking about this on the drive over here. We love to talk. Musicians love to talk. I've always loved our conversations because we get into the philosophical.
Yes.
And we're concerned about all the psychological hurdles that we're facing and the trying to find solutions to all these things in order to get onto the stage and then wipe all of that away and just be in the music and have nothing in your head.
Nothing.
It's all just music coming out, which I find is so. It's like the musicians. It's our journey. It's
the musicians cleanse. You have to cleanse every time you go up on stage. I mean, think about it. Your wife and kid could be home struggling with some serious personal issues.
Yeah.
You just got the phone call.
Yeah.
But you have to go on stage.
You got to count off the
minutes.
first tune, and you got to be in it.
And you can't. Sans, life or death, Yeah. But some heavy stuff
I find that's one of those universal things I will say to all of my friends who are professional, you included, and we've all been there, where we've been on stage. I think, I can't remember if we were on a TV show or we were doing something or whatever. We were in between songs or whatever, and we're just talking, and we're talking about something totally unrelated. And I was like, and we're on in 5. And it's all of a sudden you just turn around, you're like, 1, 2, 3. And then, I swear to you, it's as if you just chopped, there's no transition time.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're jumping through these zones.
It's turn it on, turn it off instantly, which is hard. It's because I would say so much is tied to emotions here,
right.
And everybody knows you can't just turn emotions on and off. But we've all been in an argument, and then the phone rings, and you pick it up, and you're like, hello. Band leaders have egos, musicians have egos. That's a tough thing to navigate, and
comes with the territory.
It does. You want to be real, but at the same time, there's politics involved, and you have to play the game. There's a little bit of the game. It's funny that we talk about these things. I get asked a lot about music school, and whether it's a kid saying, man, I'm trying to figure out what school to go to. He's at a gig and he comes up and he's asking me. Or sometimes it's a parent saying, my kid's just graduating high school next year,
what do you think?
and he's thinking about going to blah, blah, blah. So, okay. I think music schools are great, of course, but in my experience, I say,
I'm biting my knuckles over here.
I know, go to school and study business or philosophy or something brainy, and you can still take music classes, take private lessons, do it as much as you can. But musicians are notoriously terrible business people. All of the troubles that we're talking about have so much to do with the business and the management or the mismanagement of it. So
you just said something. Musicians are notoriously bad business people.
Yes.
Question number 3. Career musician brief. What are some of your principles and methods? Now, we all know that principles do not change. They're constant. So what I mean by a principle, the law of gravity, it doesn't change. It's not going to ever change. Gravity, you throw it up, it comes down. That's gravity. That's a principle. It's a law. It's done. Right? However, there are methods of dealing with gravity that you can counteract it. Right?
Yeah.
And there's different methods that the astronauts have learned.
Yeah.
So, what are some of your methods to deal with the tried and true principles of not only life, but really more specifically our business?
Yeah, our
because
business.
You just said it. Musicians are notoriously bad at business. This is the whole reason why I started the Career Musician podcast, because I'm tired of dealing with musicians who think that they don't have to be business savvy. It's a business.
Yeah.
You're a grown person. You still have to earn money and provide for your family.
You're a professional.
Yeah. So talk on that.
Okay, so I would say this is sort of the conversation that gave birth to the joke, how do you get a musician to complain? Give him a gig.
Give him a gig.
Yeah, so you can always pick away at something. You always find something to complain about. But the gigs will come. And how you deal with them and how you present yourself and what you say to the band leader and the arrangements you make with them are important. And there's probably a lot of questions for young players that are like, I don't even know what to ask. Or I'm afraid to ask. I don't know if it's fair for me to ask that. Or and I also am somebody who probably in my life suffered somewhat from not wanting to be the squeaky wheel. I didn't want to ask questions. But I would say this, musicians, sidemen especially, there's no contracts. There's no set anything. Hardly anything is in writing. there's a level, like most of the artists get contracts. Some of the bigger tours, there'll be some stuff to sign. But if you're just gigging, it's a guy calling you, can you do the gig on, next Friday? It pays $100. Mm-hmm. And if you say yes and hang up the phone, okay.
That's a verbal contract.
Yeah. The logistics were not discussed. There could be a lot of details in there that weren't disclosed. Now it's on you to own whatever it is, and learn from it. And just, let's say, gosh, this just happened to me recently. Suddenly there's a rehearsal before a gig, and it was never discussed. And I'm like,
random.
Well,
Wow.
you want me to drive where with my gear and set it up, and I spend it in a day, and it's a weekend, I'm spending away from my family. Like, I have different criteria that I'm...
Well,
like,
right away, we
we
go to our family time. We think, wait, so now it's infringing upon
I'm burning my
personal
Saturday
life.
to go do music?
What? No.
Yeah, hard or not, it's still, it's my day.
I have a wife and a kid, man. Come on. Yeah.
So I would say, these sort of methods and principles and the routines you get into is figure out the details that are important to you and make sure you ask about them, and don't be afraid to ask. It's professional, like if a leader's trying to hide something from you, like extra oh, by the way, the gig's 8 hours instead of 4, or by the way, there's an 8-hour rehearsal before this gig that I'm not paying you for, or whatever, these ridiculous things that we've honestly been through.
So the gig is 60 minutes, but we have a 12-hour rehearsal.
Yeah, and you got to get there at 7 and load in because there's guests and like all the...
But we don't go on till 11.
So I don't know. I don't know if I'm covering it well, but I would say that, it's fair to ask, how much does it pay? What's the gear, the load-in situation, parking?
What are the times?
If I'm there a long time, what's the food situation? Because, not everybody can go all day without eating.
Some people are just prone to it, and I'm not.
Yeah. No, and that's not a dig. It's just, I'm saying there's details to get through. And I would say that, here's maybe a good way to look at it, pick one of your heroes, somebody who's a legend.
Yeah.
They're asking these details.
Right.
If you're not asking the details, you're not going to sound like a pro on the phone. You're not going to sound like you've done this before.
That's right.
What time does the gig start? Where is load-in? What time is downbeat? What time is rehearsal? Where is rehearsal? What is parking like at the venue? Do I have to drive myself, or is there a carpool? Etc. You have to ask as many questions as possible. Is there per diem on this out-of-town gig? What other information do you need from me to book a flight? You have my legal name, my birth date, my passport, etc., etc. What is payroll like? Do you need my W-9, my I-9, my corporate information? Fill all this stuff out in advance. Have digital copies. Ask as many questions as you can. Have a checklist of questions you ask management and band leaders, etc. All of these things are what add up to equate what a true career musician is.
Add the career musician to your Spotify playlist today.
Yeah, and if it's bad, own it, and then just don't make the same mistake again.
Elaborate on that.
Well, for a long time, I've been doing travel gigs, where it's like you fly out on Saturday morning, and then, you got a few hours to chill, and then you go to sound check, you do the gig, you spend the night, you fly home the next day. I did one gig, and the band leader had decided that the bass player and I were to share a room. Now, okay, at the risk of sounding like a prima donna, I'm past that. That might be cool for some people, and that's fine. It's just not for me.
Yep.
I didn't even think to ask because I presumed that we're at a certain level now where at minimum I want one room at the Motel 6 by myself or wherever it is. I don't need to stay at the Ritz-Carlton. I just whatever.
As long as it's clean and well kept. Yeah.
But you'll still get hit with it. And I think there's probably other parts that have to do with stuff we were talking about before, which is how you treat leaders, how you treat the other people, how you treat the crew that's there to help you. There's a lot of things all the heroes that I met that took the time to stop and talk to me, I love those guys, and I always have. Do you know what I mean?
And you like when you see them again, you just pull them aside.
I just love that guy, and somehow you like his playing more.
Yes,
he doesn't play any different.
Yes,
and conversely,
yes,
the guy wouldn't give you the time of day. You kind of don't like his playing as much anymore.
Yeah,
he can't play that good. He's not that great. Business, you hear that phrase, business is just business, or business is business, The fact is, music comes from your heart. It's an emotional expression.
Yeah.
Wrapped in business.
That's right.
So, you have to get the business done so that you can get to the business of making music. Yes. And it is complex, maybe more so than many other industries. Yeah. It's harder to navigate because... when someone says, no, you're not playing it right, it's hard not to interpret that as like, I don't like you.
Well, and I was just going to say, it's really because of the giant intangible in the room.
Yeah.
What's the giant intangible? The music that we're actually playing.
Yeah.
You can't touch it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like an emotion. You can't really explain it.
Without a product, without a visible product.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's an expression. It's this untold thing, and musicians deal at a level of subtlety that I think is lost on non-musicians. And I would say also, just as long as we're on this sort of principles and methods, no matter what you think, you are a salesman and you are trying to monetize your product, which is your playing. And if you say you don't like sales, you're not going to sell. And if you don't at least figure out how to monetize yourself, no one's going to buy you.
Musicians all of a sudden think...
Yeah.
that they're no longer susceptible to the principles of business.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They don't have to adhere to it.
Yeah. How do you... so it seems somewhat random to assign a value to it. If you have a garage sale, you say, I'm selling that for $5. I'm selling that for 10. Okay, so you're a player, and you're signing yourself this random, I'm worth this. This is my price. This is what you should buy me for.
Right.
And then the thing is, if it's a high price, then the question is why. That's going to be the question to the person who wants to hire you. If you say, I'm double scale, and they say, well, I've never heard of you, it's going to be a hard sell. Do you know what I mean? Like, nobody, you're new, you're 18. How can you be double scale? I think it's you and I both run into players, and I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus here, but there are players who are awesome players, and they're broke, and they're just not working because they can't sell themselves. Right. And vice versa. There's players who are actually okay. They're not terrible, but they are so busy. And you're like, that guy's busy? Right. And I don't want to begrudge anyone their success. If they figured it out, they figured it out, and good on them. Yeah. But I think that's the lesson. That's how you... Hopefully that's the perspective, that if you're listening to this and you're trying to make sense of it, if you're both an incredible player and able to promote yourself, you're going to be the next big guy. You're going to be hugely successful. That's the magic formula.
No, that is the new business model.
I do want to offer one perspective of
excuse me.
Let's see, some optimism, or at least something. Okay, so I'm going to credit Will Ferrell on... I heard him on Mark Maron's podcast, the WTF podcast. I don't know if you listen to this or not. But if you've never heard of this podcast, that one episode is worth listening to, because I think Will Ferrell is just hugely funny.
He's awesome. And Mark Maron is hilarious.
Oh, yeah, really funny. And I like that. Not unlike what we're doing, it's a comedian interviewing another comedian.
Right.
So it turns out Will Ferrell's dad was a jazz guitarist in Orange County.
Oh, that I didn't know.
Yeah. Wow. So the question kind of came to Will, like... about advice. Did you ever get great advice or whatever? And he said the most profound thing, or he told this story which really stuck with me. So he said, his dad told him, he said, Will, if all this was about was you being funny and being talented as a comedian, I wouldn't worry a minute about you. You're my son, and I would have no worry. But he said, there's one thing I've learned about working in the music industry is that it's at least 50% luck. Right place at the right time, the right person hearing you. Yes. And so get this. So Will's takeaway was, I'm off like it got me off the hook. I'm like, if I go to an audition and I fail and I don't get it, it's not 100% because I wasn't good enough.
There you go.
I wasn't lucky. I wasn't the guy.
Just
Like there wasn't the guy they're
just
looking
didn't
for.
align at that time.
The
That's
style that you might
Yeah.
lean towards this kind of playing, and they're just looking for a guy who leans
That's
that way, or
great.
they want a taller guy. Or I don't know. Who knows what they're looking for?
That's great.
Anyway. So what I liked about that is it's like emotional freedom for musicians to continue to do what they do and not beat themselves up
That's right.
for all of their failures, because
That's right.
it's gonna happen, and you're not going to get all the gigs that you want.
That's right.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's because you're terrible or you don't have what it takes.
Wow. Again, going back to the ego, it is so easily bruised.
Yeah.
And because for some reason music is viewed as a competitive sport oftentimes, which it's not. So I hate that. It's not athletics. It's totally different.
No. And yet you are competing with other players that play your instrument.
I know, so it's bizarre.
It's really weird.
And then it's always a chops showcase. So who has the most chops wins. But ironically, who has the most chops wins, right? Out on the social platform, meaning life, the social platform of life in general. But on the actual gig, you can't use those chops.
No way. Yeah.
You'll get fired.
Yeah.
You have to use restraint, exercise restraint.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about the double ironies going on, right?
That is true. Well, okay, but I think you're touching on this notion that, like I always tell people, practice the hard stuff. The better you are at the hard stuff, the more of a flow you'll get with the easy stuff. When someone just calls on you to play rhythm guitar, it is always to your advantage to practice the hardest stuff, to really get the chops way up there. The exercising the restraint is where the art is. It's
That's
like,
perfect.
sure, I could play twice as many notes. I really could. Maybe even more.
Right.
But that's not what the song calls for. The band leader's going to hate me if I do that. He's definitely not going to call me again. And it's like, well, what's more important to you, to make a statement on the one gig you get and never get again, or do you want to continue to work and be that guy? It's like, man, he can shred, but he just does the right thing. I marveled at that.
That's it.
As a drummer, I know what Vinnie Colaiuta can do, and I know what Steve Gadd and Dave Weckl and Dennis Chambers and like all my heroes, I know what they can do. And then to find out they're on recordings where like, I didn't even know that was them. Like, that is so cool to me, because it didn't call for that.
No. I played with Vinny twice in the David Foster band.
Yeah.
And I was geeked out,
Yeah.
Wow.
Chop show.
All right,
if we're going to get to everything.
Yeah, I don't know. All right, real quick here. We're going to bust through these because these are easy. Tour essentials. When you go on tour, because we don't go on tour. We do weekend warriors, what we call them. You leave on a Thursday or Friday, you come home Saturday, Sunday. It's a quickies,
Yeah.
So we call them fly dates. We call them, a weekend run, a one-off.
Yeah.
What are the essentials for you? I know you and I are both bag geeks. We love cool bags. Most musicians are, and we're all about how to pack light.
Yep.
And so talk about some of that quick stuff.
All right. Well, so my goal is always to kind of be the low maintenance guy whenever possible. And I would say after 9/11, it got a little difficult to travel with cymbals. Bringing gear on a plane is always a challenge, especially for guitar players and horn players and stuff. But so I suppose I'm lucky as a drummer, gear wise.
You don't have to carry the drums.
Yeah, I got my stick bag. Sometimes just the sticks I know I need in my
So 2 or 3
little
sets?
carry bag. Yeah. A lot of times I'm called on to run backing tracks, so I kind of have a bit of gear there to do that. If there's charts involved, I always bring my iPad, and I've got a mount for that. Then it's closed, man. Like I'm,
in and out. Yeah.
It's not that I wouldn't love to bring my snare drum, my bass drum pedal, my cymbals, and my whole kit. I'd love to do that, but. There is something nice about just rolling into the airport with just one, my backpack and my little pull carry-on bag, whatever, and like that's it. And then, and then think about logistically what it takes. You got to get to the airport, you got to get through security, You got to get to the gig, and then like if you're the guy who can just throw all your stuff in the bag and you're out of there, there's something nice about that. But then that also requires that you're cool with backlined gear. Like I think drummers, it's kind of we can't avoid it because no one's traveling with drum sets anymore. So you got to be playing through a different voice every time there. It's a different brand. It's a different, as much as you put in your rider, I play these drums and these, it might be just close.
Close enough.
So you're a little more lucky, but I would say as a guitarist, you're actually holding your instrument. Drums is just beating on things with sticks.
I was one of those guys. I never cared. I honestly don't care. No. I could show up to a gig and be like, just backline a couple guitars. What do you want? I don't know. I don't know. A Strat.
You can make it work.
A Tele. Well, what do you want? Be specific. I don't care. Most musicians are so anal retentive about all the little details and the minutia. Yeah. I really don't care. I swear I don't.
I'll bet that benefits you. And I would say to anybody who's getting into this,
it does.
Imagine both scenarios. One scenario where you demand to have all of your specific stuff. You're paying for extra baggage and trying to get that reimbursed by the band leader, and I had to check 5 bags because I have my stuff.
Oh, man.
Versus the guy who goes with no check bags and like, no, I got it. It's cool. It's then a matter, and if you nail the gig, either way. And it's like, man, that guy came with his guitar and one little bag.
Well, let me tell you,
that's destroyed the gig. It was incredible.
That's exactly why I have this MO now, this philosophy, because I have been in that position where I packed all my shit and it didn't show up.
Yeah.
So then I was stuck playing somebody else's guitar or a backline guitar with one cable into the amp or a cable into a dirt box into the amp.
You had to make it work.
And you had to make it work. And when all the cats turn around and go, oh my God, dude, you just crushed that gig.
Yeah.
Then you're like, I know.
Okay, so I think that's an interesting to hear from guitarists too, because I would say, just as it's important to learn country music, like if you're somebody who wants to learn all styles,
of course,
and you could name them. There's a long list of styles. On the list of styles, I would say, add to that playing on some weird gear.
Yeah.
Like that's
a great one.
It should be as important on the list as and I can play a weird guitar.
That's right.
Maybe not a left-hand guitar, but like you could be like, I don't care, the action's all messed up and it won't stay in tune, but I'll
figure it out.
You'll figure it out, and if you can do that and you're that guy, that gives you one more leg up on the competition, and something you can market and monetize yourself for.
That's right.
I'm low maintenance. You don't need to. I won't ever hit you with extra baggage fees. And
I think that's the key. When you're on tour, be low maintenance.
Yeah.
Just be low maintenance.
Yeah.
Look, you and I have been on quite a few gigs together. I'm going to tell a story about New York, but first, I want to hear your story. We were on a gig together.
Yes, we were.
And just talk about it, because this relates to the question of when to say no thank you.
Yeah.
Or when to walk from a gig, when to quit, or when to part ways, or how to do it. How to do it perhaps without burning the bridge all the way.
Yeah.
Or saying, F it, I'm going to blow this bridge up. I don't know. So,
Let me also, I want to preface this with an experience I had. So when I was in high school, my dad used Peter Erskine on a recording session. Okay. And Pete and I was in high school. I was
famed
15.
Jazz drummer.
He is incredible, one of my idols, right? And I remember my dad sharing with me Peter saying, "This is what I'm going to need to do your recording session." And in my mind, I was like, "What? He needs all that stuff?" Because in my high school brain, I was like, "Gosh," I kind of had that. Wow, what a prima donna! He needs this and that and this and that. And then, but really, what it was sort of respect for a career of playing with everyone from Stan Kenton to Weather Report to, like, this guy is a total legend, and he got himself to the point where he's busy enough, and if you want him, this is his rate, this is what he needs, and if you can't provide it, he's like, okay, no thanks. Like, it's not, I think, we all ask for what we can afford to ask for, right? Like, you can't, you kind of have to bring it.
Sure.
Anyway, I thought that was a pivotal moment for me, and it's interesting for it to have then come around to me. I was working for a leader who consistently would impose too much inconvenience on the whole band, and the whole band was getting really dark. It was just getting like, and I'll try to give you some examples. I think we've all been in a situation where you take an early flight, you get to the hotel, and the hotel rooms aren't ready. They're not clean.
Right.
So you end up camping out in the lobby.
Or the coffee shop.
Or they say, "Oh, there's a mall." Now,
Yeah.
I
don't want to go to the mall.
don't want to go to the mall. Like, I want to sleep.
Right.
But, so, okay, there's a certain amount of inconvenience that you need to be good with dealing with. But this was too much. And he wasn't paying. He was always asking for a discount, always asking for.
Right.
And I kind of think of him as one of those leaders who's a taker and wasn't appreciative, and he was undeserving. I was really not happy on the gig, and I was fortunate enough where I didn't need it.
Okay.
So what I did, I thought about just saying I'm out. So what I decided to do was I said, look, I was just really straight with him. I said, I've been doing your gig for a long time, and there's just been a few things that are not working for me. So moving forward, this is what I'm going to need. I'm happy to do your gig if you can deliver on these things. And if not, no hard feelings, move on. And I felt like...
You did this via email?
I did. Well, we talked about it a little. And I said, I'm going to send you an email so it's sort of in writing.
Okay,
I think the
good.
email thing is like the paper trail.
I'm glad you did both.
Yeah, I was like, listen, I've got some issues, but I'm going to put it in an email, and I'm going to spell it out just so that there's no question about, well, I didn't think you said that or this or that.
Yeah.
So I just spelled it out. It had to do with pay and logistics and flights. I don't know. The details aren't important. It was just one of those things. And I will say, that was the last gig I did for him. But I don't miss it. It's all good. I realized that's what works for me. Mm-hmm. And maybe the takeaway now is just don't be afraid to figure out what it is that's going to work for you. Because if something's going to make you that unhappy, you're not going to do a good job on the gig anyway.
If you've enjoyed today's interview, be sure to leave a review and subscribe to the Career Musician Podcast.
Another aspect of Dave Hooper is quite interesting, as he is a multi-talented force. Dabbling in computer programming early on, he's actually made a whole nother career out of it. So now he does both. So he's a career musician and a computer programmer. And this just goes to show that, just because you're a musician, it doesn't mean you only have to do music. Diversification is key, right? We learned that in investing, so why not in the cultivation of your career? Diversify. And if you feel led to do something else other than music, there is nothing wrong with that. Please do not let anybody tell you there is, and do not let your peers and colleagues pressure you into thinking that you're not a pure musician. That's a bunch of baloney. Thank you for tuning in. To help support this podcast, please leave a review on iTunes and, of course, hit that big subscribe button. I love bringing you behind the scenes and sharing valuable insight from the world's leading experts in music and entertainment.
I'm just a nomad, nowhere man, writing the songs in this one-man band. A nomad. Hush now, darling, you'll be fine. I'll be back this way sometime. Until then, baby, don't you cry.